Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. My name is Brad Stair, and this has been a labor of love for me. To date, we have put out 20 episodes, which is always a cool milestone to me and something that I'm immensely proud of that we've gotten to this point. And we have so many more guests that I'm wanting to have on, some that I'm lining up right now, some that's taking a little bit of time to figure out schedules and things like that. But in this episode, I wanted to do something a little special. I wanted to go back to the 13 or 14 guests that we've had to date, look at a few clips, and bring those back for your listening pleasure. If you're like me, you're looking at the market now and it's a little confusing, right? You see news reports, you see other things like that where they're saying the job market is doing really well. Unemployment, I think, is below 5%. People are working, everything's good. But then you go on LinkedIn and you see the people that are going through it. The people who have been out of work for a year and a half. I saw some that were over 27 months, and it just breaks your heart to see. And if you're like me, it's a little bit confusing because I had unemployment for a while, so I would have been in the unemployment numbers, but unemployment has ran out. So I am no longer even counted in the unemployment numbers, yet I'm still looking for a job. And it is because of that the heart was and will always be the job seeker that is looking for that next opportunity, the person who is a little bit down and in need of encouragement, the person who is looking for any kind of information to try to help them land that next opportunity. And that is why this podcast exists. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you 6 clips from past episodes. I could show you so much more, but this podcast would probably be 3 hours. So I'm going to pick 6. And from those 6, we are going to learn some great insights about where we are in the job market, how to try to land that new opportunity, and all of those types of things. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so this first clip is with a man by the name of Matt Thompson. Now, I've known Matt for almost over 5 years now. He helped me try to find a job back in 2020. He was a recruiter at the time, and he was trying to help me get on with a company here in Oklahoma City. And over the years, we've stayed in touch. And at the very beginning of this podcast, he was generous enough to come on and talk about the applicant tracking system, the ATS system. The system that most big companies use to find their applicants. And if you were like me, it was a confusing system, something that I didn't really know how it works. And he was a person who actually designed those systems for major companies here in Oklahoma City. I know of 3 or 4 that he mentioned specifically, and I'm sure there are more. It was a wonderful conversation. I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that whole conversation. But in this clip, we talk about something that I know that all job applicants are familiar with, and that is companies ghosting them, not getting back to them, leaving you in the dark. So we start with that topic, and then we get into a topic that has been a recurring theme on this podcast, which is human interaction, networking, getting yourself out there. It's a great clip. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it.
The ghosting thing is really fun to talk about. I say it's really fun to talk about because it's literally every day. Every day on LinkedIn, we can see a post about how come I never hear about this? We talk about all the automation of the function. It is so easy to turn on an auto rejection letter in an ATS system. It is like it's a built-in function. There was a time when maybe 7 or 8 years ago when legality or litigation lawsuits started preventing that as well. 7 or 8 years ago, we stopped checking references and we'd go to a company called theworknumber.com and get name, rank, and serial number, time, date, payroll first day, payroll last day, because people were afraid of getting sued for giving references. People are also afraid to reject in the last couple of years because discrimination claims have shot through the roof, even though we've had a lot of changes in how people are measured on that. I just saw 3 posts, and I joked about my age earlier, but you're seeing a lot more posts recently on LinkedIn about age discrimination and how that's happening because there's a big population of Gen X and boomer workers that are struggling to find work because of whatever reason. So the ghosting thing is very important. There are a couple of companies out there that literally tell you when you apply and you get your email that, hey, you've applied successfully. Thank you for your interest. We will call you if we're interested. And that's it. And that's their excuse to ghost, right? That's it. If they call you, then you're good to go. If they don't call you, then they weren't interested in the first place. And eventually the job will get filled. Everybody will get an auto letter. And that's why if anybody's watching and they've seen this message come across 10 months later, and I know you have, because I've had to fix these in companies where the recruiters don't close the job. Now that's an internal budgeting headcount issue that I could get into in a whole other business acumen conversation where hiring managers will keep jobs open so they can keep it in their budget so they can have it for next year. And that's when they'll actually hire the person. Mm-hmm. And that's when you're talking about dummy jobs, which we haven't even got into yet, jobs that are posted out there and repost on LinkedIn all the time. And anybody out there who's seen it where they've seen a job reposted a day ago, reposted a week ago, and you see another 1,000 applications in it. Why is it out there? Well, there's an automation in the system, in an ATS system or applicant tracking system that feeds the jobs to job boards. And if the job doesn't close in the system, it keeps reposting it. So we're seeing a bunch of unfillable jobs out there and people are wasting their time applying to it.
What would be your advice? I mean, you've got LinkedIn, you've got all these other job boards, you've got all these things, but what would you, if I came to you and said, tell me, what is my best chance of getting a job? What would be your advice there?
Well, it's interesting. So it's gotten really guerrilla level. And we saw this in the 80s and 90s where people would, especially during the tech boom. Let me jump into that. Like the early 2000s when you literally had Facebook driving by with a digital signboard to Twitter's offices saying, we'll hire you for $20,000 more or whatever. And they would get that competitive. You just talked about it being lost. I think one of the things is reaching out to mentors on LinkedIn, people that are professionals in the work that you want to do. You'd be surprised at how easily it is to connect with them and just say, hey, I'd love to connect with you. I'm in your business, but I'm entry level. I'd love to, if you ever had time for a 15-minute Google Meet or a cup of coffee because we're local, and just give me some advice of what I would do. A lot of YouTubers are doing that right now. They're going out and asking entrepreneurs and successful people, what made you this way? And they're all going to talk about, we grind, we don't, we work a lot. We work on weekends. We go to the office. We do things. I think that's something that I've been encouraging my young people to do. I speak to those young people. We have 145 kids in YLX each year, and they're top students. They're 3.8 to 5,000. They have these crazy GPAs, and they're from our best schools, public, private, whatever you can think of, homeschools. We got a lot of great homeschool kids. And I tell them to go meet people. You don't join a group like Leadership Oklahoma City and don't go meet. Harold Hamm's part of Leadership Oklahoma City. He's a billionaire. Why would you not shake his hand and ask him a question? You have the ability. There are a lot of leaders out there that are successful of every background you can think of that will meet with you and talk with you about this stuff. I do it all the time. I coached somebody last Friday, like I told you. It was through a friend in the HR world, said, hey, can you talk to this guy? He hasn't looked for a job in 15 years. And I'm like, that's a perfect person for me to spend 30 minutes with and go over the basics of what to do and help them maximize the context they already have. So I think no matter what age level you are, and I know I was talking about entry level a minute ago, I don't care if you're 40, 50, 60, 30, and I'll hit every decade in there. You should be able to reach out to people. I mean, there's so many ways to interact from that perspective. So that first tier is that I'm going to get personal with some people. I'm going to connect with them, even though they don't know who I am. But they're going to be nice enough to connect out with me. And there's more people that will do that none. Yes, everybody is not going to connect with you, but the ones who do, they're going to offer you some value. And you're going to be able to offer that back to them. So I think that's good. The paying it forward piece. I think also we were talking about the networking piece. Your organizations, we talked about certifications and how they're not as important, but the meetings can be. And that's, again, back to going to a meeting for the professional level of whatever you're in. There's tons of financial and accounting. There's IT at the Yin Yang for a ton of different divisions of IT. There's supply chain groups. There's manufacturing groups. There's product manager groups. I mean, I could go on. You need to find your organization, connect with them on LinkedIn, then connect with them in your local area.
All right. In this next clip, I talked to a friend of mine that I grew up with in high school named Zach Copland. Zach founded a company and is an entrepreneur. And I wanted to talk to some entrepreneurs, knowing that that is an option that people can look into when they are going through a job search and trying to decide, is this the right time for me to start something? But I also wanted people to find out what is the true nature of it. You see so many get rich quick schemes on social media and other things, but I wanted someone who's actually done it to give some advice, some realities of what does it look like to be an entrepreneur. One of my favorite parts of that conversation is when I asked him, are you someone who has mentors? That was something that was on my mind, something that I have realized that I've never really had in my career and something that I'm hoping to have in the future. It was a great piece of this conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Zach about whether or not he has mentors. So are you a person who takes on mentors?
I mean, sure. I just haven't happened to find any. That's a good question, because we all want mentors, right? Mentors are valuable, and I want to be a mentor to other people. But that's a much harder thing than it sounds like saying it out loud. Mm-hmm. Sure, I want some mentors. Where are they? They don't just come knocking on your door and say, hey, Brad, Zach, you're a really good guy, and I want to dedicate a significant amount of my time and resources into you with probably no return besides the feel good part. Mentors, that's a really good question. That's probably been the hardest thing to find throughout the entire experience.
Yeah, I remember, gosh, it was a few months ago, right? I was right in the middle of the last stint at the last place that I was at Novus, and I walked into this guy named Drew's office, who I just loved. And I think you've met Drew, and
yeah.
I really just liked him as a person. And I walked in one day because I had this realization that I've been out of school now for 16 or so years, 16, 17 years. And I sat there and I said, I've never had a mentor. I've never had that person that just sat down and took an interest in me and said, I see something in you and I want to help cultivate that. But one of the things that I realized was that I also was never a person that approached anybody and asked them if they would even be willing to be that. Somehow I thought magically by osmosis it would happen. And this guy would say, man, I really like you and I think you're going to be great. And that's just not the way that it happens, because as you mentioned, it's a hard gig. There's really not a lot of return for them unless they're trying to get you to a point where you're making money for them.
Exactly.
There's not a lot to that, but it goes both ways, because I didn't ask and I assumed that someone would take an interest in me. And I had people that liked me that I had worked with. I still have an old customer from my very first job at Baker Hughes that I still talk to on a regular basis, but he's more of a friend and an acquaintance, and I ask him for advice, but it's not like a formal thing. So that's why I always ask about the mentors, because I realized that was something that I really wanted, but it's also something I never pursued.
I did go out and start asking people to be my mentor. At one point, I got to the moment where I was like, okay, I need a mentor because I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to literally approach the people that I know have been successful. And I started asking, and we don't necessarily have strong relationships. These are high level people that have succeeded in the industry. But I did start sending out messages and making calls to people who I wanted to be my mentor, but we don't have a relationship. They didn't have any reason to mentor me. They didn't have some incentive. But a real mentor doesn't need incentive. I mean, that is a unique person, right? Do I have a mentor right now? I'm not sure I have a mentor right now. I'd probably say no. And anybody who approaches you and says, I want to be your mentor, I can almost guarantee you that is not going to be a free experience. That is going to cost something.
This next clip is with a person that I absolutely adore, Erin Luber. I could talk to Erin for hours on end. I think she's an absolute rock star. I have enjoyed every time I've had a chance to get to speak to her. And I had the opportunity to not only have her as a guest, but she was gracious enough to invite me to her live stream that happens every Friday at 11 o'clock Central. I highly encourage you to check out that live stream. And in a little bit, I'll show a clip from that live stream as one of the clips that I show here. But in this clip, I ask her about what should we do to try to master the art of being in an interview. And she gives some great advice. So without further ado, here is my little clip with Erin Luber.
Anybody who's going to give you actionable, I can give tips all day long, right? I've given a bunch of tips just in our conversation. For you, Brad, I'm going to say, we're going to do a 1-hour mock interview. Let's grab a job description and let's do it. Show me what you're doing in this interview, because I cannot tell you how to improve if I don't see the nuance of what you're doing, because everybody shows up differently. So step one is we're going to actually create a scenario where I can observe you doing the thing that we need to, I think, improve, right? That's why we're talking. And really, when it comes down to it, though, there's 3 things that happen or don't happen in an interview. And that usually results in you getting or not getting the job. One is, were you technically correct? Okay. Are you giving technically correct answers? That means someone asks you a question and there is an answer to it. You need to be able to give the answer accurately. Maybe it's about how you would use a certain coding language, or you'd have to write a piece of code, or maybe it's about how you would solve this specific process-based sort of problem, and you have to use the right steps. 1 + 1, you say 2. If you say 1 + 1 is 3, they're like, wrong. We probably aren't going to hire you. So that's the technical component of your interview. Then there's the presentation part. The presentation is more not what you say, but it's how you say it. Do you get lost in your stories? Are they difficult to follow? I interviewed someone at one point in my career who kept using people's first names and mentioning these people to me, and I had no idea who these people were. So I'm giving and Brad said this, and Joanne said this, and I'm thinking, I don't know who these people are. And so I had to keep going back and be like, well, who is this person? Like, why are they important to the story? And it diluted their presentation. And it really, what it demonstrated was a lack of awareness that I didn't understand what they were telling me because they weren't giving me enough context. So that presentation component can be a big gotcha. And it is for most people. That's what gets most people is presentation. And the third piece is simply skill and experience. Like I said, it is a hiring person's company's market, right? It is not a candidate's market right now. And so sometimes you have done everything technically and presentation wise that you could do as perfectly as possible. And someone else just has experience that is a little more aligned or a little bit bigger or, more complex, and they're selected versus you. And I think at the end of the day, if I'm beat out by somebody because I did what I could control, and if they chose somebody who had an experience that I simply didn't have, I can look at that and say, look, I could go spend time building that experience and closing that gap, but that's a pretty valid reason to lose out to someone else. But if it's your presentation or if it's your technical responses, those are things you can fix. And so that's typically what I spend time is the strategy. What are they asking? Why are they asking you this? How are you answering it? Have you noticed you say these things? Let's think about this. Let's go back. Let's practice. I'm going to give you some homework. Come back in a week. We're going to do this again. That's how I prep with somebody when we do interviews. So we do the reps in a safe space together so we can work out all the bugs. By the time you get into the interview, you're very aware of what your gotchas are, and you've been practicing to build some habits and some behaviors that hopefully counterbalance those.
All right, in this next clip, I speak with Rebecca Otis Letter. Rebecca was someone who got recommended to me when I reached out to people on LinkedIn and asked who are some great people for me to talk to. She was one of the first people who got sent to me, and she was gracious enough to want to come on. Rebecca wrote an incredible book called Knock, which if you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to go out and get it. It will change the way you interact with professional connections. It'll change the way you interact once you get inside a company and you deal with people with different departments. It's just an amazing book. In this clip, this is the end of the conversation where she begins to talk about the power of why when having professional contacts. The power of having conversations that revolve around why instead of what, and changing the conversation into how you can help solve their problem, and having value-based conversations with professional contacts instead of conversations that are steered towards you and what you need. It is an amazing clip. It's one of the clips that's had the most traction on any social media. She is an incredible speaker, an incredible person, and I hope that you enjoy this little section of our conversation about the power of why. What stood out to you so much about taking the what out of it and be more focused on the why that made you want to write about these types of interaction?
Yeah, well, I'll give an example of someone who reached out to me recently, someone close to me, and was like in a job search. And she was like, I am not getting responses and it's so frustrating. And they told me they would reach out on Monday and now it's Wednesday. And why can't they just say, I need more time, or this is a no? And the waiting is driving me nuts. And I've been there. I really have. So I'm on the outside. It's a little easier and clearer to see from this perspective. And I reminded her that doesn't mean it's a no, that this may be your top priority, but to others, they may have 10 top priorities, and this is just one of them. And maybe they need to check with one more person before they get back to you. And you just don't know it yet, but that might be happening. And we need to be a little bit empathetic and know that it just sometimes takes time. Also, I said, she said, I followed up and I'm waiting. And I said, well, what was in your follow-up? And I thought it was great. It was well worded. And it said, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. Hope you had a great vacation, because they were going to be traveling, and I hope to talk to you soon, or something like that. And I said, in the future, one thing you could add is, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. I'm really excited about this opportunity because X, X, and X. That's the why part for them and for you. But really, you're writing it for them. If you're receiving the email, you want a reiteration and reinforcement of, this person is following up with me. 1, they're proactive. 2, they care. 3, now they're telling me again, reminding me about that conversation and why this is an important opportunity for both of us, because she's really excited to bring these skills to this organization. And that's just going to continue to prove the value in a way that resonates with your audience. And so it's just weaving some of these small things in. And when we're so focused on our goal, we need our job yesterday, last year, as we need it. But we need to slow down a little bit and just remember to add these pieces in there about what would be important to them. If I was receiving this email, I would want someone to remind me of our conversation, who they were, and why this is going to be a great opportunity for both of us, rather than just, hey, following up, right? I think it was a good follow-up, it was a good reminder, but we need to continue to bring forward the why and what would be important to them. And if we just put ourselves in the shoes of others, like one time in a workshop, someone said, I never thought of a recruiter as a human, because I was just so focused on they have the power to hire me or not. And instead, oh, yeah, they had a vacation. Now they have so much on their plate and they're trying to get through their inboxes, and probably mine went to the bottom. And, how was their vacation? So it was a great personal way to add that in there. And so we really need to think about the why, our why. And if we don't have a why, then we need to think about whether that even is an opportunity we want to pursue. So it's not just for the other person, it's also keeping us in check with what are the opportunities that we feel connected to enough based on what we think we can contribute there, based on the organization, the culture, the problems you're going to be solving in that particular role. Do you enjoy it at work? And so I also say research is a filter in the book, because doing our research, it might prove that this isn't an opportunity I want to even spend more time pursuing, and it may save everybody time. So the why is really important, and we need to think about and try to figure out through our interactions with people what is really important to them. And sometimes we'll be off, like, I think this is really important to them. And they're like, well, it was, but now I have new goals this year. And it changes. But if we can figure out the why and focus less on the what, which is like, I need the job now. You said you were following up Monday and now it's Wednesday. Like, we get caught up in that. And so the biggest takeaway of the knock method, which I have to remind myself of every day as well, which is to slow down and be intentional with the connections that we're building in our careers. And when we create space, that enables us to take time to research, be more prepared, which helps boost our confidence, by the way. And then it also gives us that time to remember to be more human and talk about the why and think about purpose and impact more than just an outcome.
All right. In this next clip, I speak with Malay Vyas. Now, I worked with Malay almost 12 years ago now, and he was an incredible person to work with back then. But as I followed his career, he has become more and more important in the companies that he's worked in. He's now the president of a company. He's been vice president of a lot of companies. He is on the other side. He is a hiring manager. And one of the things I knew is that I wanted to have people on the other side of the table to share their insights when they're talking to potential job candidates and how they view those interviews and what they look for and things like that. And at the very end of our conversation, he talks about showing accountability and showing your industry knowledge. It is such a great insight for people that are looking to get into a new company. I wanted to make sure you heard it. Here is my clip with Malay Vyas.
Besides the resume, and because that's something that's printed in song paper and you may do everything, but make sure, and one of the recruiters had once told me that, make sure your accountability and accomplishments show up more than I'm doing this, and this for the company. But what are you accountable for? Where does the buck stop in your organization? What is it for which the buck stops at your desk? And that's your accountability. See if you can highlight what you are accountable for. I mean, if you were a clerk, a front desk clerk at a Hilton or a motel, your accountability is to make sure that at the end of the day, you make sure there is a night audit, you close the accounts, and you are responsible for that. So that accountability, and then the accomplishment that followed, that, okay, we had 365 days without any issues with my accountability. Make sure that gets highlighted. And when you get in front of a human, and you guys all do this, but show that enthusiasm and ability to take initiatives while tackling a problem. And it might be outside your fringe role that's been written up in the job description. So make sure that it's at the end of the day, if a recruiter is hiring is talking to 8 people, how do you make sure that you are the one that person remembers when their work is done? If the HR guys are done with 5:30, they should remember, okay, that's the guy I was really impressed with. Unfortunately, it's come down to branding and the interaction part of it. That's something we all need to practice. I also would advise people not only to research about the hiring company, but what industry they are in, what are the challenges facing their industry, their customers' industry. So if you are interviewing with a company that makes wastewater pumps, what are the challenges that company is facing as a manufacturer, and what are the challenges faced by their customers and their industry? So you're showing a deep dive into the role that you're getting into. Not just your manufacturing, you're making castings for a company or you're inspecting quality, but how far up can you see within the industry? So it zeroes back into making sure that everybody in the organization sees how they directly or indirectly impact the growth of the company. So you are at the front end of it. This will help you project what you can do for the company by understanding the market trend.
Okay, in this final clip, this is the conversation that I had with Erin Luber on her live stream, the Career Lunch Break. It was an amazing conversation. I was so honored to have her come on, especially since I am not a guru in job search. I am not a professional in this. I am simply a person who is going through it just like all of you. It was such an honor to have her come on. And at the very end of our conversation there, she asked me, what advice would I give to fellow job seekers? And there were a couple points that you've probably heard me talk about before. I know I've posted it on social media, but it's something that I want to hammer home with all of you because I feel like it is important for us all to remember these points when we are going through a job search. So without further ado, here is my little clip on my advice to fellow job seekers.
I always ask when we wrap up, I always ask every guest for a piece of advice, either a piece of good advice that someone gave you that you really like, or maybe just a piece of advice that you'd like to share with people that you'd like them to take with them at the close of this.
Yeah. So because a lot of the people that I try to reach are job seekers, the biggest thing I want to tell them is, A, you're not alone. There are a lot of people going through the same situation that didn't have any control over the company deciding that they wanted to do layoffs or, whatever. So you're not alone, and you're not the only one. And it is okay to reach out to people, friends, family. You're welcome to reach out to me. If you see me on LinkedIn, I'll talk to you too, and I'll be an ear and things like that. So you're not alone. That's one. The other one is you're not a failure. And I know it can feel like that, especially if you're in a situation where there was a very few people that were let go and it was you that was one of them. And, now you're seeing that you don't have any income coming in. You're not a failure. And that's just important for people to know. And then you will find something else. It only takes one. There's however many millions of companies, hundreds of thousands of companies, however many companies there are, but you only need one to say yes. And they're out there and you will find them. And not only will you find them, but you'll thrive because you've gone through this experience.
Yeah.
And you're better for having gone through this, whether it feels like that or not. And you probably don't see it right now, but you will do better. And you will thrive in your next position. So I think that's the biggest thing is, hey, you're not alone. And there's a lot of people out there that are here for you. Reach out. Don't just try to take it on yourself. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Job Seekers Journey podcast. I hope you enjoyed going back and listening to the clips with some of my amazing guests. Again, I could have done 20 of these clips. I could have brought on every guest and shown every clip that I could find. This podcast has and will always be a labor of love for me. It's something that I care deeply about. I care about fellow job seekers and what they're going through. It's something I obsess about. It's something that I am constantly looking at. How can I bring helpful information to people that are going through this process? But I can't do it alone. I'm doing my best to get the word out. I'm putting out social clips. I'm putting out everything on YouTube. It's all over the ways you can find a podcast. You can listen to it in audio only. You can listen to it in video. But I need your help. If you know someone who is going through a job search and is struggling, if they need encouragement, if they're looking for information, if they can't figure out what they may be doing wrong, this podcast is for them. So please do me a favor. Forward this on to someone you know who is going through this process. And I hope that if you're listening to this, that this is bringing you useful information that you can use practically to find your next job opportunity. Coming up soon, we'll have some amazing guests. I can't wait for you to hear them. From all of us here at the Job Seekers Journey podcast, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.